Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere you've never been, and probably never want to go. Imagine this. Flickering tallow candles throwing gold light on splintered oak tables. The air is thick with smoke, sweat, and the unmistakable stench of rotting boar fat. You're already seated, and, oh no, you're expected to eat. Welcome to a Merovingian feast where the food might kill you, but refusing to eat might do it faster. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when people are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't sit. You are seated, placed deliberately between a sweating, sunburnt noble who smells like boiled onions, and a boy who might be 12 or might be 42. It's hard to tell under the layers of dried mud and chainmail. Before you can assess their threat level, a manservant lurches forward and drops a basin in front of you. It's full of rosewater, clotted with petals, and vaguely pink in a way that makes you wonder if the roses are the only things that bled into it. You're expected to wash your hands. This is one of the few civilized gestures at the table, though no one bothers to change the water between guests. As you dab at your fingers, pretending you don't see the floating scab, you try to breathe only through your mouth. Spoiler, it doesn't help. The main dish arrives with all the subtlety of a battlefield trumpet. A roasted boar, blackened and crackling, is plopped down so hard the table creaks. Its snout is stuffed with rosemary. Not for flavour, for aesthetics. This is less about food and more about proving that someone had the power to kill, roast and flamboyantly garnish a creature bigger than you. The meat, let's call it aged. You stab your knife into the haunch and feel a strange give, like stepping on a damp sponge. The juices that ooze out smell fermented. Historians still argue whether this was a preservation method or simply the inevitable result of slow transport and even slower kitchens. But don't worry, you're not expected to eat much, just enough to avoid insulting your host, and to avoid standing out, because everyone is watching, or pretending not to. Eyes flicker over goblets, heads tilt slightly at every hesitation. No one here eats for pleasure, they eat for position. The feast table is more than a meal, it's a silent tournament of alliances, threats, and almost poetic condescension. Each guest has a ranking, whether visible or implied, and the closer you sit to the king, the greater the chance someone will test your wine for poison, either out of concern or opportunity. Suddenly, a man across from you coughs, a wet, dragging kind of cough that ends in a thick silence. Everyone freezes. Is it a bone? A curse? A signal? Nobody moves to help him. He turns slightly green, steadies himself on the table and continues chewing. Applause? No. But someone nearby nods, as if awarding a point. You're still unsure if you're supposed to laugh or start writing your will. Above you banners hang like sluggish bats. Faded saints peer down from tattered tapestries. Their eyes seem to follow you, probably because they actually do. These Merovingians believed the dead could meddle in the dining room just as freely as the living. Some were even invited. That seat across from you, empty by design, reserved for a saint, or a ghost, or maybe both. You sip your drink, because what else can you do? It's mead, allegedly. The taste says otherwise. Something sweet, something sour, something vaguely metallic. There's a whisper of rosemary echoing the boar's snout. It's less a beverage and more a dare. A dog scampers beneath the table, jaws stained with something that might once have been a rabbit, or a guest's sleeve. No one reacts. In fact, some folks gently move their plates to let the dog pass. It holds more rank than you. Then a low whistle rises from the far end of the hall. It's not musical. It's a signal. The boar's head is yanked from its perch and tossed onto a silver tray, which disappears behind a tapestry. That's where the real feast happens. The post-meal whispers, the trades, the conspiracies. You're not invited there. Not yet. Or ever. A hand clutches your shoulder from behind. You tense. The grip is firm, bony. It smells of incense and old parchment. A monk, maybe. Or a judge. Either way, he leans in and says in Latin, not quite a whisper, not quite a threat, "He who speaks without being spoken to is meat." You nod, which seems safe. The hand lifts. You exhale. So this is dinner. Boar, mead, and the occasional existential threat. You glance at the nobles nearest you. They've stopped eating. They're watching the door. That can only mean one thing. The queen is coming. She doesn't walk. She arrives. The queen glides into the hall like she was poured from a chalice, tall, cold, and glittering. Her robe shimmers with stitched gold thread that catches the firelight in unsettling ways, like it might start moving on its own. Her crown isn't delicate. It looks like it could slice a man in half, and you better believe that's by design. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. You glance back at your plate, unsure whether to continue chewing or just quietly expire where you sit. Around the table, forks freeze mid-air, goblets remain lifted but untouched. Even the dog lies flat. The queen moves down the length of the table, and with each step men straighten their posture like puppet strings are being yanked. Her presence isn't about beauty, though she has that in the sharp, dangerous kind of way that makes you want to say something witty and then vanish forever. No, it's about control. She commands the room like it's a battlefield. She stops, right, beside you. You look up, slowly of course, and meet her gaze. It's like staring into the polished surface of a ceremonial blade. You're not sure if she sees you or just the space your betrayal might someday occupy. Eat, she says, one word, with the firmness of a curse. So you do. You fork a piece of meat into your mouth and chew with exaggerated reverence. It tastes like aged shoe leather soaked in candle grease. But hey, at least you're not dead yet. The queen moves on. Everyone exhales. To your left, the holy man finally speaks. You didn't even realize he was breathing until now. He murmurs a prayer under his breath, not to bless the food, but maybe to ask forgiveness for witnessing it. He smells faintly of beeswax and mouldy vellum, and when he turns to you, his face is the colour of pale bark. They say, he whispers, she poisons men with her eyes. You nod as if that's perfectly reasonable, because here, it is. The man to your right chuckles softly. That's nothing. My uncle swears he saw her feed her second husband to a bear. Alive. Historians still argue, the holy man mutters, whether there ever was a second husband, which doesn't comfort you considering that bear thing might have been metaphorical, or not. The queen takes her seat at the far end now, beside the king. He hasn't spoken yet, just watches. One hand on a goblet, the other stroking the fur of something small and alive curled in his lap. Might be a cat, might be a stoat, might be an omen. He leans toward her, and they exchange a glance so sharp it could sever a bishop's spine. They're Merovingians. The bloodline traces back, allegedly, to sea monsters. No, seriously, Quinotaur, half bull, half sea beast. Fringe, maybe, but even the bishops won't say it's false, probably because denying it out loud feels dangerous. The holy man beside you clears his throat and lifts his chalice, mouthing something in Latin you barely catch. It's a blessing, one that invokes saints, martyrs, and all the holy dead that guard the threshold, which is not the vibe you want from a toast. You sip again, nervously. The mead has changed flavour. You're not sure if it's your nerves or if it really now tastes like cloves and regret. You lower the goblet to find the queen staring at you again. You freeze. She says nothing, just raises her fingers, thin, ringed, and somehow glowing with something that feels like winter. She taps her goblet once. That's it. Then she returns to her conversation, or spell, or hex. Hard to tell from this distance. You try to read the room. Everyone is now eating again, but mechanically, chewing, nodding, pretending. One man is carefully carving his meat into perfect squares before stacking them like little altars. Another is using his bread to mop up sauce he never touches. There's a rhythm to it, a ritual, and you're out of step. Across the table, a young woman wipes her lips delicately with a piece of linen embroidered with saints. Literal saints. Like their names. She catches you looking and offers a smile too wide for the moment. Don't let the queen frighten you, she whispers. She only curses those who talk during the 5th course. You blink. We're on the 4th, she adds. Comforting. She leans forward a bit. They used to slit tongues for less, you know, back when her grandfather ruled. Historians debate whether he ever ruled at all, murmurs the holy man. Because he burned all the scribes, she finishes sweetly, as if this were part of a lullaby. From above, the scent changes. Incense is heavy, musky, church-like. A censer swings into view, guided by a wide-eyed boy in 2 large robes. He paces the hall as if exercising the food, or the guests. The queen doesn't blink as the smoke coils around her. Neither does the king. You blink a lot. This isn't dinner. This is theatre, ritual. And you're not an actor. You're the prop. You check your goblet again. Still liquid. Still terrifying. A hand claps the table. Not hard, but enough. All eyes turn to the bishop at the end of the room, the only one higher ranking than the queen in theory. In theory. He nods once. Somewhere a bell chimes. That means the next course is coming. You're not sure what it is. But it's wrapped in feathers and twitching slightly. Someone's probably going to lose a finger, or worse, a title. And you're seated a little too close to the edge. You barely have time to shift in your seat before a new wave of servants bursts from behind the tattered tapestries, carrying trays like they're cradling royal infants or unexploded devices. Each tray is draped with gauze, the contents twitching ever so slightly beneath. You pretend not to notice. The man beside you groans, not out of hunger, but like someone remembering an old injury. Meat, he mutters. Always the meat, always the mystery. One tray lands in front of you. The gauze is peeled back. Steam rises. The smell is confusing, sweet, gamey, sharp. It's like roasted cinnamon collided with a wet forest floor. A bird, maybe. The feathers are still on its legs. Its eyes are closed but not removed. You poke it with your knife and the skin gives slightly, like it's thinking about resisting. The holy man makes the sign of the cross over his plate. You're not sure if it's for his food or yours. The nobles begin to eat again, or more accurately to pantomime eating. No one seems to swallow. You cut a small piece, chew, and wonder if food should ever be this textured. Across the hall, the queen feeds a sliver of the dish to that mysterious animal on the king's lap. It licks her fingers. You do not feel reassured. Mead continues to flow like honeyed regret. One servant refills your goblet with something darker. It smells like mulled wine and burnt leather. You sip and nearly choke. It's strong enough to strip varnish. Or thoughts. Either way, it starts warming your stomach like a small, suspicious fire. The hall's murmur rises again. Gentle conversation, laughter, the occasional cough that sounds like it came from beneath the floorboards. Someone starts a toast, but no one finishes it. The phrase drifts into silence. The man to your right nudges you. They say if the meat's undercooked, it means mercy. If it's burned, it's a warning. You glance down. Yours is perfectly golden. Great. The bishop at the head of the table begins a slow chant. It's Latin, but garbled. Half memory, half performance. The words wrap around the meal like ivy. His voice is low and sharp, like wind scraping over gravestones. Half the table joins in. The rest pretend to chew. Some say, murmurs the holy man beside you, the chant keeps the spirits at bay. Others say it invites them. Historians still argue whether these chants were ever part of official Merovingian ritual, or simply theatre for the paranoid. But when a small wind gusts through the closed hall and extinguishes a line of candles behind the queen, you decide to lean toward invitation. A loud thunk jolts the table. A young noble, freckled, flushed, has slammed his knife into the plank beside his plate. He stands. His cloak falls to the floor, revealing a tunic stained with something too dark to be wine. "Speak!" he roars. The table stills. "Speak!" he shouts again. Who dares question my birthright?" No one moves. No one responds. You briefly consider sliding under the table and living the rest of your life with the dog. The queen doesn't blink. The king remains still. Then, almost imperceptibly, the queen tilts her head. A single guard steps forward. Silent, unhurried. He walks to the shouting man, takes him by the shoulder and turns him around. No struggle, just a nod, and out he goes. The door opens, then shuts. The candles near it flicker once, then return to stillness. The moment is over. Historians still argue whether that was real, whispers your neighbour, or if it's always been part of the feast. You take a deep breath and realise the air has changed again. Fresher now, as though someone cracked a window. Or a curse, you're not sure which. You glance down, your food is gone, no one cleared it, no one touched it, it simply vanished. A chill moves up your spine as if fingers are climbing it. A new dish arrives, something steaming in a bone bowl, thick and red, with chunks, You don't ask what kind of meat it is. You no longer want to know. The Queen speaks, and her voice rolls over the room like velvet soaked in thunder. Drink. Everyone obeys. You raise the goblet again. Sip. The wine tastes different now. Dark fruit, iron, and... cloves? No, not cloves. Blood. Boar's blood, your neighbour confirms. It's symbolic. Of what? He doesn't say. A child begins crying in a corner, quickly shushed. The sound echoes just a second longer than it should, like something is repeating it. You notice, for the first time, a row of saints carved into the hall's rafters. Their eyes are wide, their mouths open in frozen gasps. They've seen this feast before. They will see it again. And you? You're just passing through, but not unnoticed. The knife isn't meant for the meat. You realise this slowly, like a stain blooming through linen. As you observe the rhythm of the table, it becomes clear that your blade is far more ceremonial than practical. Everyone's knife is slightly different. Some simple, some engraved, others crusted with what might be amber or what might be dried something else. But they all gleam with careful menace. You test yours. The edge isn't sharp enough to carve a turnip, but it is very sharp in the middle. Too sharp, like someone honed only the part meant to be inserted quickly. Into something. Or someone. This, you realise, is less a utensil and more a declaration. The man across from you, bearded, eyes like flint, rests his blade flat on his bread and stares at you. Not challenging, not hostile, just watching. You nod like one does at someone holding a possible murder weapon with casual grace. A whisper passes down the table, soft as moth wings. Not speech, just breath. One guest murmuring into another's ear, like a chain of suspicion. A toast is given in Frankish, then corrected in Latin. The nobles raise their knives in salute, and for a moment the whole room glints like a pond full of piranhas. No one drinks, not yet. The Queen lifts her own blade. Her fingers are pale and jewelled, but they grip it with practised certainty. She taps it once, ping, against the rim of her goblet. The signal. Drinking resumes. The king hasn't moved in minutes. He simply watches. His eyes are deeply set, his expression unreadable. One gets the impression that if the roof collapsed, he wouldn't blink unless it interrupted dessert. You try your wine again. Still blood adjacent, but sweeter now. Closer to syrup, if syrup had been aged in a crypt. A server approaches carrying a bowl. Wide, shallow, ringed in dull silver. Inside floats something fleshy, grey-pink, and undeniably human-shaped. Fingers. Several. Not fresh. Not entirely bones either. Relic broth, someone whispers. You don't ask whose relic. You don't ask if it's symbolic. Instead, you busy yourself arranging your napkin. Woven linen, likely imported, bearing a faint motif of crossed spears and roses. The spears are subtle. The roses are not. The holy man beside you blesses the fingers, then drinks the broth. You try to look grateful when they pass the bowl your way. Just a sip, you think. Just enough not to offend. You dip your spoon. It wobbles. The taste is rich, spiced, horribly familiar. You don't ask. From a high window, a burst of wind rattles the glass. The candles nearest the bishop flicker again. He frowns, but says nothing. The Queen leans toward the king and whispers something into his ear. He doesn't react. But moments later, the servant reappears and places another tray at the Queen's elbow. Something wrapped in velvet, laced with thorns. A gift? An offering? A warning? Historians still argue whether Merovingian kings practiced ritual gift-giving during feasts, or if these events were coded courts of judgment. Some scholars suggest the dinners were less about nourishment and more about purification, deciding who would remain in favour, who would fall from grace, and who would quietly vanish before dessert. A gong sounds, not a bell, a gong. Low, metallic, and gut-shaking. It vibrates your spine like a tuning fork of doom. Everyone sets their knives down, gently, precisely, all at once. Even the dog whines. The king speaks. 3 words, in a language you don't know. Maybe Frankish, maybe something older. The table responds with a choral grunt. The meaning is unclear. The effect is terrifying. A servant scurries by with a scroll. He opens it, trembling, and begins to read a list. Not aloud, just to himself, head shaking slightly as he mutters under his breath. You realise he's counting. People, guests, names. Is this a census or a checklist? Beside you, the holy man mutters, "The knife is not for meat, it is for witness." You turn, confused. "To swear with," he explains. "To cut the truth into flesh, if needed." You wonder if that's figurative. You hope it's figurative. Another whisper passes the table, a name, followed by a silence. The guest at the far end, a woman in a green velvet cloak, rises slowly. Her expression is unreadable. She bows deeply, perfectly, and walks out, not escorted, not summoned, just goes. Everyone watches, no one claps. The knife isn't for eating, it's for testifying. And yours? It's clean. Too clean. Suspiciously unused. You reach for a chunk of bread and smear it lightly with grease from the platter, then draw your blade through it. Just a mark. Just enough to leave a trace. Across the table, the Queen sees you do it. She smiles. Not warm, not approving, just aware. The knife is not for the meat. It's for the moment when silence breaks, when truths are demanded, when saints fail, and you're not sure which of those is coming first. The Queen doesn't blink, not once, not during the entire fifth course, not when the servant trips and spills pomegranate seeds into a bishop's lap, not when a rat scampers across the floor with the confidence of a nobleman late to court, and especially not when her gaze lands on you. A little too long, a little too direct. You try not to react, but your spine knows. It goes rigid like a banner pole, your breath caught somewhere between reverence and indigestion. Her eyes are dark, not soft, rich brown, but the glossy black of obsidian wet from the ocean. Is not just that she sees you, it's that you get the sense she's storing you somewhere behind those eyes, like a parchment she'll reread later, looking for treason between the lines. Across the room, a jester capers briefly, then disappears behind a curtain. He's not amusing, he's not even funny, he just exists, like a spot on your vision that won't go away. No one laughs, except the Queen, just once. A breath of a chuckle, and then silence again. "She blinked last feast," the woman to your right whispers. "A boy died." You don't ask if the two things were connected. You already know the answer is yes, but not how you think. Historians still argue whether queens of this era had political power or simply exercised it because no one dared stop them. The holy man mumbles this more to himself than to you. He's no longer eating. He's just turning his goblet in slow, deliberate circles, like he's stirring something. The table continues its careful dance. Eating, watching, drinking, measuring. It's not a meal. It's surveillance with snacks. And the Queen? She's the sun no one dares look at directly, yet orbits anyway. Her robes whisper as she shifts in her seat. You glance up and she's threading a ring onto her index finger. A massive one. Red stone, set in what appears to be teeth. Human, by the looks of it. Small ones. A gift from an enemy, perhaps, or a child. Possibly both. She lifts her goblet, tilts it toward the bishop, and then drinks. Everyone else follows suit like synchronized dancers in a play you weren't given the script for. Your goblet is empty. A hand appears behind your shoulder, silent and fast, refilling it with something thick and herbal-smelling. The servant vanishes again, as if absorbed into the woodwork. You sip. It tastes like moss, cloves, and ash, like someone tried to make tea from a monastery garden and a funeral pyre. Still, you smile. That's the safest thing to do here. The dog barks once, short, sharp. It's answered by a low hum from the king. He hasn't spoken since the ritual phrase earlier, but now he hums a low note, as if tuning himself to the room's unease. The Queen doesn't acknowledge it. She's busy watching someone else now, a noble 3 seats down. The man straightens, spills a drop of broth on his lap, and then pretends nothing happened. His face is calm, but sweat pools at his temples like twin rivers of panic. The Queen tilts her head. Slightly. You would rather be anywhere else. The 5th course begins to vanish. You still don't know what it was. Something between a bird and a beast. It tasted like regret and clove-smoked mystery. The king reaches for the creature in his lap. Yes, it's still there, and lifts it for a better look. It's a stoat, or maybe a weasel. Possibly just an enchanted scrubbing brush that developed emotions. Whatever it is, it bears small, sharp teeth, and the king nods solemnly as though it said something wise. The queen blinks, just once. Every fork drops at once. Silence. A man, middle-aged, round, with hands too smooth for farm work, gasps softly and slumps forward. His forehead hits the table with a hollow thunk. No one screams. No one rushes to help. The bishop makes a slow, half-hearted sign of the cross. The queen sips her drink again. "So it's him," says your neighbour. You glance at the body. No blood, no convulsions, just stillness. "He was probably guilty," someone whispers. "Of what?" you ask without thinking. A pause. "Breathing incorrectly," they say. The servants arrive with linen and the body disappears. Efficient, like removing a roast that went dry. The feast continues. The queen never blinks again. You look down at your knife, now smudged with bread and old meat grease. You wipe it clean, carefully, methodically, like you've seen others do tonight. A small nod of competence in a place where too much flair is fatal and too little attention is suspicious. The candles on the queen's end of the table flicker again, but this time, no draught. You swear the shadows are moving against the flame, and maybe, just maybe, the saints carved above aren't watching anymore. They're looking away. You're not allowed to chew. Not really. You're supposed to place food in your mouth, let it rest respectfully on your tongue, and glide it down your throat like a noble thought. Chewing is for peasants. Or, worse, for the kind of people who don't get invited back. Across the table, someone makes that exact mistake. A crunch. Subtle, innocent, and instantly regrettable. Heads turn, but not dramatically. No one gasps. This isn't that kind of punishment. It's worse. It's observed. The queen slowly lowers her goblet. The king tilts his head, curious, like a lion hearing a mouse make one last unfortunate squeak. The offender, a thin man with noble bones and trembling hands, swallows fast. He dabs his lips with his napkin, even smiles, too wide, too late. A bell sounds in the corridor. That's all. He's not seen again, not even when the next course arrives. His chair remains warm, but his soul has clearly been reassigned. Historians still argue whether chewing was actually frowned upon, your neighbour whispers. But in this hall, even if it wasn't, it certainly is now. You nod, gently, with your jaw locked firmly shut. The new dish is served with alarming speed, something soft, pale, glistening. Possibly eel, possibly chicken, possibly eel stuffed with chicken. It jiggles like it knows something you don't, and it probably does. A servant leans in and whispers, "Do not bite the tongue." You look at your plate. The eel, or whatever it is, has been arranged to resemble a face, a crude one with slits for eyes and something vaguely resembling a nose. And yes, there's a tongue, pale pink, coiled like a secret. Your stomach whimpers. You take the smallest possible portion and place it gently into your mouth. No chewing. You use gravity, faith and prayer to slide it down. It tastes like betrayal in gelatin form. To your left, the holy man does the same. His eyes close as he swallows, whispering something under his breath. You catch only 2 words. Saint Apollinaris. You make a mental note to look him up. Maybe he's the patron of dangerous dinners. The queen hasn't touched her food. Her plate remains pristine, and yet she dabs her lips as if finishing something exquisite. A performance, one you're expected to mimic. The king, meanwhile, is now feeding bits of the eel to his stoat. The animal chews freely, recklessly. No one dares to stop it. The bishop on the far end of the table leans in and claps once. Everyone looks his way. He lifts a goblet and says, "To the blessed silence of our ancestors." Everyone echoes it. Except you. You mouth the words half a second too late. The queen notices. You immediately pretend to choke. It's not difficult. The eel is helping. The woman next to you pats your back, then subtly hands you a linen square embroidered with saints playing lyres. It smells faintly of cloves and something ancient. You thank her with a look and a twitch of your eyebrows, because speaking would be worse than chewing. A new servant arrives, this one barefoot and covered in gold dust. He carries a platter of bread, just bread, but it's shaped like limbs, arms mostly. Not elegant ones either. Thick, stubby, with curled fingers like they're reaching for help. You're handed one, a left arm. The crust crackles beneath your fingers, and when you break it open, steam releases with the smell of anise and toasted barley. Eat only the fingers, someone warns. Anything more is considered impolite. You nibble a pinky, chewless. It flakes apart, and for a moment you almost enjoy it. But then the bishop coughs, loud and theatrical, and the moment collapses. From somewhere behind the tapestries the sound of chanting begins. Not coordinated, not beautiful, just present. A ripple of voices humming low, as if trying to remember a tune from a dream you weren't part of. You glance up at the carved saints in the rafters. They're smiling now. The Queen's knife taps against her plate 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. Everyone stops eating. The King speaks. You understand nothing of what he says, but the room shifts with the weight of it. His voice is like stone dragged over stone, old, smooth, heavy. The kind of voice that doesn't care if you comprehend because it already knows the ending. And you've got eel in your teeth. You dare not reach for a toothpick. The only ones here are ornamental and made of bone. The holy man begins to shake. Not dramatically, not with terror, with reverence. He lowers his head, hands outstretched, palms up. The Queen stands, the rest of the room follows. And so do you, because chewing isn't your biggest problem anymore. It's that you've been invited to stand. And in this hall, that never just means standing. A bowl of goat eyes blinks. Yes, blinks. It happens just as you rise with the rest of the guests, trying to mirror the precise measured reverence of the people around you. And then, there it is. A servant passes close, carrying a low brass bowl filled with what at first looks like peeled grapes in broth. Then one twitches. You stare. Blink once yourself. Another eye shifts, lazily, as if annoyed at the candlelight. You're definitely not hallucinating. Not unless everyone else is hallucinating too, because no one seems particularly surprised. They say, whispers the woman beside you, that if the eyes blink it means the goat saw something, and survived. Or, the holy man adds with unsettling calm, it means it didn't, and something else is watching through them. Oh good. You adjust your posture as the Queen sweeps past you, her robe trailing just close enough to brush your ankles. The sensation is electric, cold silk and the implied weight of divine vengeance. You instinctively bow your head as she passes, though no one told you to. At the far end of the hall, a low platform has been cleared. The King moves toward it now, flanked by 2 guards whose armour clinks like a whispered threat. On the platform rests a table, but not for eating. This one is covered in velvet, adorned with 3 objects: a loaf of black bread, a small bone reliquary, and a candle whose flame burns green. That's not symbolic. That's just concerning. You're ushered forward, part of a line that forms without instruction, moving with the weighty inevitability of a funeral procession. The woman ahead of you clutches a slice of the bread in both hands, holds it aloft like it's sacred, and steps up. She places the bread beside the candle, bows 3 times, and speaks a word you don't recognize. The candle flickers. The green dims, then flares again. She's permitted to return to the table. Next. One by one, each guest performs this little rite: offering, word, bow. Sometimes the candle responds, sometimes it doesn't. Once, it snuffs out entirely, and that guest is quietly led from the room. No one makes eye contact. You step forward. A server places the black bread in your hands. It's warm, soft, smells like smoke and fennel. It pulses faintly like a heartbeat, or like someone buried something very not bread inside it. You hold it out. You bow, once, twice. On the 3rd bow you speak. You don't know what the word means. It just arrives in your mouth like it's been waiting. Infernum. The green flame flares, high, wild, and then still. Silence. Then the Queen claps once. You're allowed to return to your seat. As you walk back, the bowl of goat eyes is now closer. Someone's placed it at the centre of the long table. The eyes are floating still, but there's a tension in them. They seem aware. Too aware. You sit. Your hands tremble slightly, so you press them to your lap. The man across from you winks. It's just a test, he says. What kind, you murmur. The kind you don't want to pass. Lovely. The table resumes its course, now quieter, slower. This is the phase of the feast where everyone has seen just a bit too much and eaten just a bit too little to remain grounded. The goat eyes remain. They seem to track the Queen's movements. She doesn't look at them, but she knows they're there. One eye shifts in the broth and fixes directly on you. You try not to blink. "Drink," says the bishop's assistant, appearing out of nowhere with a pewter flask. You sip. It tastes like rosemary and root cellar. "Cleanse the path," he murmurs, and is gone. Across the table, a new guest has arrived. You're certain he wasn't there before. Long hair, pale eyes, robes like ash and parchment. He stares straight ahead. His plate is untouched. He doesn't blink either. A ghost? A saint? Or maybe someone no longer strictly alive but still invited. Merovingians were known for mixing the living and dead socially. Some kings supposedly took counsel from corpses dressed in royal garb, though historians debate whether this was symbolic or a result of serious wine and zero boundaries. Still, the air thickens with his presence. Even the dog doesn't go near him. The goat eyes? They float perfectly still now, and somehow afraid. A joke is told down the table, something bawdy involving a bishop and a pear. Laughter follows, though not from you, not from the ghost. The queen does smile. One of the candles burns out. You notice, distantly, that a servant is now removing the bowl of goat eyes. It's not empty, but it's missing one. Poison is part of the protocol. It sounds dramatic. It is dramatic. But here, at the Merovingian feast table, it's just expected. Not every dish is poisoned, of course. That would be too obvious. No, the real artistry lies in not knowing which sip, which bite, which guest will be the final one. You take a shallow breath. Your goblet still smells like fermented orchard and cloves, but now there's something else. A whisper of almond, a hint of minty stone. To your left, the holy man is carefully rotating his cup over the candlelight, the way one might appraise a gemstone, or test for transparency. His lips move in silent prayer, but you're not sure if he's asking for protection or precision. Across the table, a woman dips a silver spoon into her cup and lets a droplet fall onto a folded scrap of vellum. It darkens slightly. She nods, then drinks. This is all normal. You look around, finally seeing the quiet rituals happening at every seat. The biting of bread before sipping, the switching of goblets when servants turn their backs, the faint rattling of relics tucked into sleeves and sashes, shaken like dice before each taste. "Poison's not the crime," the woman beside you says, dabbing her lips. "Getting caught is." Historians still argue whether poisonings at Merovingian feasts were routine assassinations or ceremonial acts of judgment, expected if not exactly approved. Some say kings would invite rivals just to test the immunity of their stomachs. Others claim it was more spiritual than lethal, a way to balance out divine favour. If you survived the wine, you deserved the throne. If you didn't, well, perhaps sainthood awaited. Drink from the left, your neighbour advises. The right side's for guests they hope don't linger. You freeze. You've been drinking from the right. Of course you have. You glance back at your goblet. No one is looking. You gently rotate it and sip from the opposite side. Does it help? Does it change the taste? Not at all. But you feel fractionally safer, like someone who's just moved their sleeping bag an inch away from a snake. The queen raises her goblet. Everyone lifts theirs. She speaks a word, sharp, clean, deliberate. Veritas. Truth. The room echoes it. Veritas. Then they drink. You follow suit. It's either that or signal open rebellion by refusing. The wine coats your throat. It's thicker than before, slightly bitter. You swallow and feel the liquid settle in your gut like a secret waiting to be discovered. The bishop doesn't drink. He watches. His fingers drum slowly on the table. 3 taps, then pause. 3 taps again. Morse code, maybe. Or just the rhythm of dread. A servant passes with a tray of figs split and filled with soft cheese. They look harmless, innocent, which of course means they're dangerous. You don't touch them. The ghost down the table still hasn't moved. His plate remains untouched. His goblet is full, but no condensation forms around it. He doesn't eat, someone whispers. He waits. For what? For someone else to die. You smile nervously. No one else does. Suddenly a gasp. Not dramatic. Not even audible across the whole table. Just enough for heads to turn. The man who had been carving his meat into perfect squares is frozen, knife in mid-air. His lips part. A single drop of blood spills from his nose and lands in his wine. He looks surprised. Then, gently, his face meets his plate. No shriek, no collapse, just submission. A servant approaches, nods once, and places a black veil over the body. not to carry it away, just to mark it. He was testing a new antidote, says the holy man. It didn't work. A few guests murmur respectful disappointment. One even sighs, like someone watching a friend lose at dice. A second goblet is placed in front of you. You blink. It's tradition, a servant says, to offer another. Another what? They don't explain. It's golden, smaller, cooler. You hold it, consider your options, and sip, if only to see whether the second death is faster or more philosophical. It tastes like cinnamon and iron. Blessed be the brave, the bishop intones. The room repeats it, though not loudly, like a lullaby with barbs. The king finally speaks again. One word. Enough. The courses pause. Not end. Pause. A silence settles, uneasy, swollen. The queen remains still. Then she lifts her knife and cuts her bread into a perfect triangle. It's a signal. The feast will resume. You hear someone behind you say, "I think I taste almonds." And just like that, the conversation moves on. The singing corpse in the corner has a lovely baritone. You wouldn't notice him at first. He's seated too far from the central table to draw attention, tucked beneath an archway where the torchlight stutters and dims. A velvet curtain hangs behind him, casting long shadows across the slab he sits on, cross-legged, hands folded, chin slightly raised like he's preparing to deliver a sermon or an elegy. Or both. You don't see his mouth move. You just hear the hum, a low melodic drone that rises and dips like Gregorian chant passed through a cracked mirror. He sings something wordless, something ancient, and disturbingly, something oddly familiar. "That's St. Chilperic," says the woman beside you, casually reaching for a fig, or at least, what's left of him. You try to respond, but words fail, mostly because your throat tightens with the realization that she's not speaking metaphorically. "Oh yes," she continues. "They keep him preserved with frankincense and wet cloths. He was the king's great-uncle, or spiritual advisor, or personal curse. No one really knows." The holy man beside you gives a reverent nod. Historians still argue whether he died before the coronation or during. Across the table, a boy in gilded robes is trying very hard not to look at the corpse. He fails, his goblet tips splashing wine on his sleeves. No one moves to help. He's clearly in training. The music continues. No one claps. No one smiles. It's just accepted. You study the figure more closely. His robes are pristine. His skin is a shade too pale for the living, but too fresh for someone entirely dead. His hands are veined but unwrinkled. You're not sure whether he's embalmed, enchanted, or simply stubborn. The queen's gaze drifts in his direction only once. He stops singing. Silence. Then, after precisely 6 heartbeats, the hum begins again. Slightly slower now, as though marking time for something else. The bishop begins to murmur. It sounds like Latin, but older, rooted in something pre-Roman, pre-Christian, pre-acceptable. His fingers dance through symbols drawn in spilled wine on the tablecloth. The singing grows louder. Some say, the woman next to you offers, dabbing her fingers with perfumed cloth, that he only sings when someone's lying. You freeze mid-sip. What? If the corpse hums during your toast, she says, you've got 2 options. Admit your falsehood, or leave the feast feet first. Great. Just great. The next guest to stand is a thin man in crimson and grey. He raises a goblet and declares something about the eternal loyalty of his house. It's a solid speech. Emphatic. Poetic. The corpse hums a half-tone higher. The man falters. The king leans forward, barely perceptible, but enough to turn the air glacial. The man smiles, wavers, and amends his toast. To the loyalty of our house, as long as it is met with favour. The corpse resumes its original tone, crisis averted. The queen dips her bread in honey and takes a bite. That, you realise, is the real applause. Now it's your turn. Of course it is. You're not given a choice. The servant beside you bows, hands you a goblet engraved with a single word. Odere. To dare. The holy man leans in. The less you say, the safer you stay. You stand, knees full of bees. Your voice is uncooperative. You say something. Simple, bland. Something about gratitude and the generosity of the crown. The corpse does not sing. The room is quiet. You sit. Everyone politely ignores your trembling hands. The singing resumes, low and melodic. as if you've been deemed neither saint nor threat. You exhale for the first time in 5 minutes. The candles along the northern wall burn blue now. No one addresses it. The king feeds the stoat a piece of meat carved with a symbol you don't recognise. The queen lifts a black feather and lets it fall onto the floor. It lands perfectly between your boots. You don't pick it up. The ghost across the table smiles. He hasn't moved. But now you're certain. He's been watching you the entire time. You're served something with feathers. At first you think it's a joke, a visual gag in the middle of a banquet that's been anything but funny. A servant approaches with exaggerated care, holding a pewter tray covered in a velvet cloth embroidered with saints clutching swords. He bows, as if presenting a relic. He lifts the cloth. Beneath it lies something avian. Feathers intact. Beak sharp. Wings spread. It's not cooked, at least not entirely. Its skin glistens faintly, more oiled than roasted, and its eyes, yes, it still has eyes, are hidden beneath a delicate lace veil soaked in wine. The overall effect is somewhere between absurdity and threat. You wait for someone to laugh. No one does. "This is an ortolan," whispers the holy man, not looking at you. "You eat it in one bite." "You what?" "In one bite," says the woman to your right, nodding solemnly. "It's tradition. The veil is to hide your sin from God." And just like that you realise this isn't a joke. This is real. And somehow, this is one of the more gentle parts of the evening. The servant gently sets the tray in front of you. The ortolan stares past you, as if still considering escape. You glance up. No one is watching, and yet everyone is. Historians still argue whether the Merovingians truly consumed the tiny songbird whole, or if this was a myth wrapped in horror to scandalise later generations. Either way, the table expects you to perform. The queen takes her veil, lifts it over her face, and disappears behind the gauzy wine-stained fabric. Then, with the elegance of a serpent unhinging its jaw, she tilts her head back and lets the bird vanish. Her hands do not shake. Her expression does not change. The veil comes down. Her lips are still red. You try not to panic. Your veil is damp. It smells like cloves and something bitter. Wormwood, maybe. You lift it slowly, uncertainly, and hope your hesitation reads as reverence instead of nausea. The ortolan is tiny in your hand, like a trembling morsel of myth. Its bones feel delicate, hollow, alive in their own way. You raise it, head back, eyes closed, and then, quickly, before you can think better, you do it. One bite. Crunch. You try not to gag. The taste is complex, smoky, metallic. There's sweetness too, like roasted apple soaked in blood. The bones crack softly, like pine twigs. The texture is everything your mouth never wanted, but you chew, because you must, and you swallow, because not swallowing would mean far worse. The woman beside you pats your arm gently. "Well done," she says. "Only 3 guests choked last year." The ghost across the table raises a single eyebrow, as if impressed, or amused, or hungry. You take a long sip from your wine. It does nothing to cleanse the taste, but it helps disguise the trembling in your jaw. Another servant appears with a bowl of water, not for drinking, but for rinsing your hands. You dip your fingers in. It's cold, icy, as if melted from the snow caps of a saint's forgotten mountain. Tiny petals float atop it. Marigold, violet, something pale and unnameable. You dry your hands on the cloth provided. It's stiff with old starch and embroidered with more eyes. Yes, eyes, not stylistic ones. Realistic, veined, weeping little eyes stitched in gold and black. "You've passed the bird," the bishop says without looking at you. "Is that good?" you ask, forgetting to whisper. He turns to you, slowly. "No one ever passes the bird," he says. You swallow hard. Again. A gong sounds. The ghost across the table claps once. It's the first sound he's made. And then you see it. The feather. The black one the queen dropped earlier. It's gone from the floor and now it's on your plate. "You've been marked," the holy man whispers. "For what?" He doesn't answer. The table begins to murmur again, but now it's different. Less conversation, more incantation. The guest beside you bites into bread. Red crumbs fall like dried petals. A servant passes carrying a platter with a single skull upon it. It's painted. decorated, its eye sockets filled with honey and saffron. You don't ask where it came from. It's not for eating, it's for reminding. The corpse hums louder now. The Queen raises a finger, and just like that, dessert arrives. You dare not yawn, which is unfortunate because you're exhausted. Not just tired in the physical sense, but drained in the bone-deep, soul-weary way that only comes from pretending not to be terrified for several hours straight. Your jaw aches from tension. Your stomach flips every time a tray appears. Your spine feels like it's been tied in knots by invisible court etiquette. But still, you sit straight, alert, mouth firmly shut. Because a yawn isn't just rude here, it's rebellion. A declaration that the feast is beneath you, that the pageantry is boring, that the dead man humming in the corner is somehow not stimulating enough. You sense the tension. Others feel it too. A servant to your left stifles a hiccup with the grace of a man about to be executed. The woman across the table has been blinking one eye at a time for 20 minutes, trying not to drift off. 2 yawns last feast, the holy man murmurs. One was pardoned, the other not. You nod slowly, resisting the urge to breathe too deeply. Your neighbour continues. They say saints see yawns as invitations. Open mouths draw open souls. Not helpful. You glance again at the rafters. The carved saints seem to loom larger now. Their mouths are still open, caught mid-gasp or mid-scream. It's unclear. But now you swear a few of them are yawning. The Queen notices everything. Her eyes flicker toward the corner of the room, where a young noble slouches ever so slightly. His head dips, and he does it. He yawns, a quiet, jaw-stretching, tear-forming yawn. The room stills. No one addresses it. No one gasps. But 10 minutes later, when dessert is served, his plate is empty, and his chair is too. No noise, no removal, just absence. Historians still argue whether Merovingian feasts included actual divine surveillance, says the woman beside you, but let's just say no one's ever tested it twice. The dessert placed in front of you looks deceptively innocent. A tart, small, circular, topped with thin slices of apple, cinnamon and a single thorn. Just one, embedded gently, almost elegantly into the crust. A reminder, the holy man says, of what? He doesn't say. He just removes the thorn with 2 fingers, places it on the edge of his plate, and eats in silence. You follow suit. It's sweet, crisp, fragrant. By far the most normal thing you've consumed all night, and for a brief moment you forget where you are, until your teeth meet something soft, too soft. You freeze, chew, swallow, hope. From behind the tapestries a low bell tolls. The Queen taps her ring against her goblet once. Tink, then again, tink. The humming corpse stops. Someone whispers a prayer. The doors at the far end of the hall creak open. Not wide, just enough to let something in. A breeze, a shadow, a trick of the candlelight. Whatever it is, it feels cold. The stoat in the king's lap perks up and hisses, soft and sharp. The king nods, not at the creature, at you. You look down. The thorn is gone. You never removed it, but now it sits in the centre of your empty plate. You are being watched, says the holy man. By who? Pick a century, he says. You sit back, careful not to let your shoulders sag, careful not to sigh, definitely careful not to yawn. The Queen has produced a hand fan from somewhere. She snaps it open, flicks it once, then points it at you. You smile weakly. Not too much, not too little. The ghost down the table smiles back. He's holding an identical thorn. The bishop stands and recites a psalm in a language you've never heard. The cadence is wrong. Too even. Too cold. A saint's name is whispered. Then another. Then yours. Your name. Whispered by someone behind you. You turn, but of course there's no one there. Just the saints on the walls. Watching. Waiting. Possibly yawning. You turn back to your plate. It's been replaced. A new tart. This one has 2 thorns. You smile again, and you do not yawn. Your goblet has teeth marks, not yours. That becomes clear as you lift the cup to your lips again. Your 3rd, maybe 4th refill of the night, though at this point time feels like something the saints borrowed and forgot to return. You angle the goblet under the flickering candlelight, and there they are. Teeth marks, 2 rows, small, human, deep enough to leave impressions in the soft pewter. Someone bit this cup. Hard. And recently. You slowly lower it back to the table. The woman beside you notices your hesitation and leans in. The previous guest didn't handle the 6th course well. What was the 6th course? She smiles but doesn't answer. Instead, she lifts her own goblet and rotates it, her thumb brushing over a faint groove, almost lovingly. They say the teeth of the uninvited leave the deepest mark. You want to ask if that means the last guest wasn't supposed to be here, but something about the way she says it makes you feel like that question has too many answers and not enough exits. You look back at your goblet. The teeth marks are oddly spaced, too small for an adult, too wide for a child. You wonder briefly if they belong to someone who wasn't entirely human anymore. Historians still argue whether Merovingian feastware was personalised or recycled from event to event. Some records suggest kings collected the goblets of their victims, passed them down like trophies. Others claim the cups were deliberately shared to confuse poisoners. And then there are those who whisper that the cups themselves remember. You try to sip from the unmarked side. No difference in taste. But the cup feels heavier now, as if someone else is still holding it with you. The ghost across the table raises his cup. No bite marks. Of course, he doesn't need to drink. The humming from St. Chilperic changes key again. Higher now, wavering, like someone singing through a dream. A new tray arrives. This one is different. Covered, yes, but the cover is a cloth the colour of ashes, stitched with what looks like script. Names, maybe? Symbols? The servant pauses behind each guest, whispering a phrase before placing a dish. When he gets to you, he leans in. His breath smells of cloves and wet stone. Remembrance, he says, then places the dish. You lift the cloth. It's a face, yours, sort of, carved into bread, moulded with honeyed figs for eyes and almond slivers for teeth. It's smiling, smugly. You recoil slightly, then look around to see if anyone else received a doppelganger pastry. They haven't, just you. The bishop begins to recite a list of names. Some sound ancient, others eerily close to people at the table. Then one sounds familiar. Yours, again, but not spoken by him. From your plate, the bread face opens its fig eyes. Just for a second. You blink, and it's still again. The woman beside you reaches out, breaks off a piece of the bread face's cheek and pops it into her mouth. Not bad, she says, chewing thoughtfully. A little too much mace. The ghost nods. You're allowed to eat it, says the holy man. You're expected to. I expected something else. Expectations, he replies, are the first thing that dies in this room. You take a bite from the forehead. It's warm, chewy, infused with something floral. The figs collapse like soft secrets. The almonds crunch like forgotten bones. The queen is watching. She raises her goblet. Slowly, deliberately. The king does not move, but the dog at his feet bares its teeth. They match the bite marks on your cup. Of course they do. You glance again at the goblet, now drained, and notice something else etched just beneath the rim. A word, barely visible. Memony, I remember. You want to ask who remembers what, but the ghost answers first. He taps his own empty plate twice, then gestures toward yours. You look down. The bread face is gone. Every crumb. Your mouth is dry. You check your hands. They're sticky with honey, but you didn't finish eating. Someone else did. Someone with small, sharp teeth. A ghost sits in your seat. Not literally, yet, but metaphorically, spiritually, ceremonially, absolutely. You return from the chamber behind the tapestries, where a servant led you with a smile too wide and eyes too still, only to find your chair changed. It's not empty. It looks empty, yes, but your goblet has been moved, your napkin refolded, and a single dried rose lies on the seat cushion, pressed so flat it looks like it's trying to vanish into the velvet. You stand for a moment confused. A murmur passes nearby. No one acknowledges your absence nor your return. It's as if you never left, as if someone or something sat in your place while you were gone. The holy man looks up. Ah, he says gently, you have a guest. He gestures toward your chair and then to the space just above it. You squint, and now you see it. A shimmer, A flicker in the air, like heat rising from stone. Except this is cold. Your breath fogs just slightly as you step forward. The woman beside you reaches out and brushes the air above the seat with her fingers. She jerks them back instantly. "Still warm," she says, from the chair, not the seat, the ghost. "This happens sometimes," she adds, "especially when someone's been noticed." By who? The saints, the bones, the bloodline, doesn't matter which. It's rarely the one you want. You glance around. No one is reacting. No one is helping. In fact, the Queen is watching with something that might be interest, which is worse than indifference. Her fingers tap against her goblet in a pattern that might be a hymn or a countdown. The ghost hasn't left. You feel it, like static clinging to velvet, like an idea that won't leave your mind. It's not hostile, just occupying. "You have to sit," says the holy man, "or it becomes permanent." "What happens if I sit on it?" "Depends who it is." Fantastic. Historians still argue whether Merovingian feasts involved ancestral spirits, or if this was a metaphor used by later monks to explain their chronic indigestion and frequent visions. Either way, this is very real right now. You lower yourself, slowly, into the seat. It's colder than it should be. A breath slips past your ear. Not wind, not whisper, just presence. And then it's gone. Sort of. Because now, you are the guest. Your plate is different now, smaller, gilded at the rim with tiny Latin script. The words blur when you try to read them. Your goblet has changed too. Thicker stem, heavier base, full again. You sip. It's not wine. It's memory. You taste honey, burnt oak, ink, candle soot. You taste a book written in your name before you were born. You taste loss. You place the goblet down, hands trembling. No one comments. A small choir begins to sing in a side alcove. Boys in grey linen, eyes closed, voices thin and ancient like something echoing up from a catacomb. The ghost in your seat hums along. You don't hear it. You feel it. The bishop raises a scroll, reads a list of names. Again, yours is not included. But when he finishes, he looks directly at you and says, "Amen." Everyone repeats it, except you, because you were never really here, and maybe you still aren't. The Queen lifts a small glass globe from beside her plate and peers into it. You see reflections in its surface, twisted, shimmering. Your face appears. So does the ghost's. The same, the same, the same. The king lifts his hand, only slightly. You tense, but nothing happens, at least not visibly. You realize something then. The ghost isn't an intruder, it's a placeholder. You were the intruder, now you're the echo. And the feast continues as if nothing has changed. Even though everything has. You speak and regret it. Not loudly, not rudely, not even deliberately. It's just a reflex. A whisper of thought made audible as you watch the choir file out of the side alcove, their robes brushing the stone floor like drifting fog. You murmur, "They can't be older than 10. It's the most harmless thing you've said all night." But 3 heads turn, not dramatically, not with shock, but slowly, purposefully, like owls in a forest of rules. The woman beside you stiffens. She doesn't look at you, just shifts her chair a fraction of an inch farther away. The holy man closes his eyes and mutters something under his breath. Not a prayer, a warning. "Don't speak unless you're asked," he whispers. "The silence here is curated." You want to laugh, but your throat is dry. You try to recover, to pretend you were reciting something liturgical, perhaps. But it's too late. The Queen is looking at you again. Not amused, not angry, just evaluating. The same way a farmer might look at a potato shaped like a face. A servant appears at your elbow, silent and sudden. He places a parchment square in front of you. No plate, no utensils. Just this thin scrap of vellum folded once, sealed with wax. You glance at the wax. It's red, but not the shade of sealing wax. Closer to dried blood. And the imprint? Not a crest. A fingerprint. You look up. The Queen nods. Once. So you open it. Inside, a single sentence written in ink so faded it looks like it was bled onto the page. "Speak again, and you'll answer to the empty seat." You know which one that is. The The one the ghost once sat in, or you sat in, or perhaps the one meant for someone who hasn't arrived yet and never will. Historians still argue whether the Merovingian elite truly practiced linguistic restraint, or if tales of tongue removal, ritual silence, and enforced whispering were embellished by later chroniclers desperate to explain their eerie quiet. But even the skeptics agree. Something about this court devoured words, and you're already tasting regret. You fold the parchment and place it beside your goblet. It curls at the edges like something drying out too quickly, like skin. Around you, the conversation resumes. But it's different now, less friendly, more clipped. You hear fewer laughs, more pauses, like every sentence is now being weighed mid-air before it's allowed to land. The queen breaks a pomegranate on her plate with bare hands. The seeds spill across her platter like rubies in a crime scene. She eats them one at a time, with a deliberate calm that makes your stomach churn. The bishop is writing, a scroll. Your name, a prayer, a list of those to be silenced. You sip your wine. Again. Not because you want to, but because you must. It's a performance now, a gesture that says, I understand, I submit, I will not speak. The goblet is still cold. The ghost across the table raises a hand. It's the first movement in what feels like hours. He points to your plate. There's a feather on it again. The black feather. You didn't see anyone place it. You certainly didn't put it there. You glance at the queen. She's not looking. You glance at the king. He's asleep or pretending. You glance at the saints above. Their mouths are closed now. The woman beside you leans in again, voice quieter than thought. You're being tested. I failed. Not yet, she says, but the next course is expressive. A bell chimes, not a gong. A single, high note that rings out over the table like a warning shot. Servants return carrying bowls filled with ink. Not food, ink and parchment. Each guest is given one sheet, a quill. The ghost smiles. The bishop announces, write what you will not say. And now you understand. This is confession. This is penance. This is the price of a single spoken sentence. You dip your quill. The ink smells like myrrh and rust, and you begin. But you have no idea what you're writing. Your hand moves anyway, as if the ghost is guiding it. You're suddenly in the will. You don't realize it at first. Your hand finishes its writing, still unclear whether those were your words or borrowed from the presence seated just behind your thoughts, and you look down at the parchment. It's no longer blank, and no longer yours. Your name is written at the top. Your full name, a name you haven't spoken here, a name you're certain no one asked for, and below it, lines of unfamiliar script, curling like ivy, inked in a hand both elegant and unnerving. You can't read it, but you understand it. This is a document. This is a contract. This is a will. The holy man exhales as he looks at your page. You've been entered, he says softly. Into what? Lineage. The bishop approaches, moving with the stately dread of someone escorting a coffin, or a crown. He stops at your shoulder, peers at the parchment and nods. Not many are written in, he says. Written into what? He smiles, not kindly. Possibility. You look around the table. Several guests are also staring at their parchments. Most look confused. Some look horrified. One man is quietly weeping. The woman beside you folds hers and tucks it into her sleeve. The ghost across from you is gone. His seat is empty again. And yours? Still occupied, but now by you. Not a guest, not a placeholder. You've become part of it. The family, the inheritance, the problem. The king opens his eyes for the first time in what feels like hours. They're pale, pale as dead pearls. He doesn't look at you. He looks through you. He nods. The queen lifts her goblet again and says your name aloud. Everyone repeats it. Even the saints above. The candle nearest you flares, not brighter, but bluer. You feel it on your skin like cold breath. A servant appears at your side holding a small velvet pouch. Inside you glimpse a ring. Thick, twisted, heavy. It looks like it's made from melted coins and shattered vows. He places it on the table, doesn't say a word, just bows and vanishes. What happens if I put it on? You whisper. You accept, says the holy man. Accept what? No one knows, but once accepted, it cannot be given back. The ring glints, catching light from no clear source. It pulses slightly. Across the table, a noblewoman stands. "The will must be witnessed," she declares. The bishop nods. She approaches you, takes your parchment, and reads it silently. Then she folds it again and seals it with wax from a candle that hasn't burned all night. "Done," she says. And just like that, the feast resumes. You sit there, motionless, the ring before you like a riddle carved from gilt. Historians still argue, the holy man says, whether the Merovingians chose heirs through blood or presence. You don't reply. You're too busy feeling the air around you change. It's denser now, heavier. Someone places a piece of bread on your plate. It's shaped like a crown. Another guest raises a toast, to those with the stomach for legacy. The queen smiles. She looks pleased, or satisfied, or simply finished. The king closes his eyes again. You pick up the ring. It's warm. It hums. The parchment vanishes from your lap. You've been written into something ancient, and you have no idea how to get out. Everyone touches the relic. It's not optional. The bishop stands again, this time holding something small wrapped in a cloth the colour of old wounds. Faded burgundy, worn at the edges, stitched with thread so fine it seems to disappear into the fabric. He holds it high, like it's a gift, a weapon, and a burden all at once. No one speaks. Even the queen is still. He unwraps it slowly, and the silence thickens like soup left too long on a fire. Inside lies a knuckle. That's the most generous description. It's grey, ridged, almost fossilised. Maybe it once belonged to a saint. Maybe a sinner. Maybe someone who never got a name, only a title. The blessed remains. The bishop announces something in Latin. You catch only one phrase. Corpus fidei, the body of belief. He walks the length of the table. No tray, no gloves. Just the relic. Open to air. Passed hand to hand like a precious disease. The ritual is slow, reverent, slightly horrifying. Each guest touches it with their right hand, then places 2 fingers to their forehead, their lips, and their heart. Some close their eyes, others whisper, a few flinch. One woman laughs nervously, only once. She isn't seen again. When the relic reaches you, the bishop hesitates, then hands it to you directly. It's surprisingly light, dry, fragile. You don't want to hold it, but you do, because what choice do you have? It's warmer than expected, as if it remembers being alive. You follow the ritual, forehead, lips, heart. The taste of iron and incense suddenly coats your mouth, though you haven't eaten anything since the tart. The ghost is back. You see him again, just beyond the bishop. He's nodding, slowly, as if confirming a transfer. You pass the relic to the next guest. Her hands tremble. The queen clasps her hands in front of her, fingertips resting against her own throat. When the relic reaches her, she doesn't flinch. She kisses it. The room inhales. When the king touches it, nothing happens. Or rather, something does, but it's not visible. The candlelight shifts. The shadows lean slightly toward the relic. And you feel watched. Not by the nobles, not even by the saints. By it. The knuckle. The hand it once belonged to. The will behind the bone. Historians still argue, the holy man says softly, whether relics contained power or merely borrowed it from belief. He holds the relic now, his fingers trembling as if the thing has weight beyond measure. "I believe," he adds, "this one chooses." The bishop returns to the head of the table, wraps the relic again, and places it into a small iron box. It's locked with a key the size of a nail, then buried beneath salt, then placed beneath the king's chair. No one comments. The ritual has been completed, and something has been bound. The queen raises her goblet, empty now. The servant behind her places a new one in her hand. This wine is darker, thicker. It clings to the glass like melted rubies. She drinks. Everyone follows. You do too. It tastes the same as the relic felt. Dry, ancient, and slightly wrong. The bread in front of you is now braided, a new shape, interwoven strands, like a knot you're not meant to untie. The bishop says a single word. "Remember," then sits. No explanation. Just remember. You're not sure what, or who, or when, but you do. You remember things that aren't yours. A forest with no leaves, a scream in a chapel, a cradle made of bone. You shake your head gently, as if dislodging someone else's dream. The ghost smiles. The queen begins humming a lullaby. Everyone joins in. The relic has been sealed, and the next course is waiting. The tablecloth has veins, not a pattern. Veins. They pulse when touched. Faintly, subtly, like a heartbeat you feel only when you're trying not to. At first, you assume it's your imagination. You've seen so much already, tasted things that defy categories, touched things that whispered back. But no, this is real. The cloth beneath your fingertips isn't cotton or wool or linen. It's something else, flesh-like. Woven tightly, the surface looks embroidered at a glance, fine red threads crisscrossing in elegant, deliberate designs. But then your hand brushes the edge near your plate, and the cloth twitches. You freeze and look around. No one seems alarmed. In fact, the woman beside you is gently stroking the tablecloth with one finger, almost tenderly, like petting a sleeping animal. The holy man has both hands flat against it, eyes closed, whispering something too soft to hear. "You feel it now?" he says without looking. "What is this?" you whisper. "A gift," he says, "or a promise." "From who?" He smiles. "Wrong question. Try for who." You glance down. The cloth shifts again. This time the pulse is stronger. It's reacting to your presence. The bishop rises, again, and this time carries something wrapped in blue silk. It's small, square, and stitched with silver thread shaped like thorns. He walks to the head of the table and sets it down before the queen. She unwraps it slowly. Inside is a heart. Not metaphorically. It's dried, preserved, ringed in candle wax and cloves. She lifts it with both hands and holds it over the centre of the table. The room breathes in. She sets it down. The pulse beneath the tablecloth intensifies. Everyone can feel it now. The table lives. Not in the way a creature does, but in the way a ritual object might. Housing memory, echo, something ancient and half asleep. Each feast awakens it, the woman beside you says. Each guest feeds it. With food, with presence. The tablecloth shivers again, and now you realise it's reading you. Your breath, your pulse, maybe your thoughts. Some say, the holy man adds, it remembers every guest. He taps a small scar on the back of his hand, some longer than others. Historians still argue whether Merovingian banquets used living cloth in their rites, likely a metaphor for the intensity of the experience, or perhaps a misinterpretation of blood-stained linens passed through generations. But tonight the metaphor has veins, and they're watching you. You try to lift your plate slightly, curious to see what lies underneath. The cloth clings, not aggressively, just possessively. You let go. The plate lowers. The queen begins to hum again. The same lullaby from before, but softer now, like a mother rocking a cradle woven from bones and fog. The king is still. His hands rest on the table. One finger taps a slow rhythm. Ba-dum, ba-dum, matching the pulse beneath the cloth. You mimic it without meaning to. 2 taps. The table responds, just once. A single pulse in return. It knows you're here. A servant passes by with a bowl of dark fruit, dates, plums, grapes. You reach for one, and as your fingers press into the skin of a plum, the table flares beneath your hand. Not heat, a memory. You see, briefly, an image in your mind. A feast long ago, in the same hall, but the faces are different. Your own is among them. Older, or younger, or someone who looked like you. The vision fades. You drop the plum. The ghost across the table smiles. He places his hand flat on the cloth, closes his eyes. The queen speaks a name, not yours, but similar. You flinch anyway. The woman beside you lifts her goblet. To the guests who come again. The toast echoes around the room. You drink. The cloth settles. For now. But it remembers you. It will remember you. You're part of it now. You have to bless dessert. No, really. You. The servant says nothing. Just approaches your place with deliberate slowness, bearing a single silver tray draped in wine-drenched linen. The fabric is embroidered with gold thread in the shape of vines or maybe veins. Hard to tell anymore. He stops beside you, bows, and sets the tray down. Then, with 2 fingers, he lifts the cloth to reveal your new assignment. A cake. But not like any you've ever seen. It's small, round, deep black, and dusted with what appears to be powdered bone. A single candle stands in the centre, unlit. Around its base, tiny sugared flowers, and in the centre of the cake, where most people might put fruit or a dollop of cream, sits a ring. The same ring you were offered earlier. You never put it on. Now it's back. This time baked into your portion of dessert. The servant places a hand over his heart, then extends it toward you, palm up. The gesture is clear. Bless it. You glance around. No one else is doing this. Only you. The Queen watches, of course. Her face serene, unreadable, utterly merciless. The King appears asleep again. Or maybe he's communing with the cake. The bishop leans in and recites something under his breath, just loud enough for you to hear. Benedictio sine verbo est silentium, he whispers. A blessing without words is silence. So that's an option at least. You close your eyes and place your hands just above the cake. You don't speak, you don't move, you just think as hard as you can. Bless this food, bless this madness, bless this candle, this ring, this moment where you've absolutely, without a doubt, lost control of the evening. The candle flickers, but no one lit it. It simply responds. Very good, says the holy man. Most guests try to chant. The table hates chanting. You open your eyes. The ring is glowing now, only faintly but unmistakably. Its band emits a low heat, like a stone left in the sun. You don't touch it. The Queen raises her own fork, delicate gold engraved with thorns, and gestures toward you. That's the signal. You cut into the cake. It parts easily. The inside is soft, dense, the colour of ink and ash. You lift a bite to your mouth. It tastes like dark honey and stone fruit, with the aftertaste of something burned, possibly on purpose, possibly metaphorical. Around the table, other guests begin receiving their cakes. Each is different. One shaped like a skull, another like a crown. One is just a plate of sugared bones arranged to spell a name no one wants to say. You glance down. The ring is still there. It hasn't sunk into the cake. It's watching you. You need to wear it now, the woman beside you whispers. If I don't. The cake returns next year, with 2 rings. You hesitate, but only for a moment. You lift the ring, feel its weight. It's warmer now. Or maybe you are. You slide it onto your finger. It fits. Perfectly. The ghost nods, then vanishes again. For real this time. A bell tolls somewhere behind the wall. The bishop stands. This concludes the 9th course, he says. You weren't counting. You realise something else. You're not hungry anymore. You don't remember getting full. You don't even remember eating that much. But you feel it. Like you've swallowed history. Like something is settling inside you, claiming space. Historians still argue, the holy man says, whether guests at these feasts were honoured or selected. You look down at the ring. It's no longer glowing, but your finger is. A soft golden shimmer, like saint light or molten obligation. The Queen raises her goblet. Let dessert be sealed, she intones. Everyone echoes her. You do too, because now you speak when she speaks, and you bless when they tell you to. The ring tightens just slightly, enough to remind you you're no longer a guest. You're part of the ritual now. You stand for the bloodletting, not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. You literally stand when the bell tolls because everyone else does, and you've learned by now that hesitation isn't a survival trait at a Merovingian feast. The Queen rises. The King does not. His eyes are closed, his hands resting on the arms of his seat, still breathing, possibly dreaming, possibly not. The bishop walks slowly to the centre of the room, where the long table forms a U-shape, and where earlier the singing corpse sat humming against velvet. The corpse is gone now. In its place stands a chair covered in white linen. It's empty, for now. A servant enters, bearing a silver bowl. Another carries a long rolled scroll. A third holds something wrapped in fur. You know what's coming. The bloodletting is tradition. Whether you believe it's for purification, sacrifice, or theatrics, you feel it now. In the silence. In the held breath of every noble in the room. In the soft, almost polite dread hovering just above the floor like a saint's shadow. The bishop begins to read from the scroll. Names, ancient ones. Some barely pronounceable. 1 or 2 sound like yours. Then he says, The willing shall rise, and someone does. You don't know him. A young man, not more than 20, draped in fine robes and nervous sweat. He steps forward like someone walking into the sea. He bows to the Queen. She nods. Then he takes the seat, the one draped in linen. The bishop unwraps the fur bundle. Inside is a blade, thin, curved, dull silver. Too fine for war, too elegant for butchery. It's not a weapon. It's a tool. The servant holding the bowl kneels beside the chair. Another rolls up the sleeve of the man's robe. The bishop murmurs something, again, Latin, but older, earthier, less Rome, more root and blood. Then he slices. Quick, clean. The bowl begins to fill. No one winces, no one flinches. The man exhales, and it almost sounds like relief. You expect him to scream, but he smiles instead. This is the offering, the holy man says softly. The final course. Of what? You whisper. Of the feast, he replies. Not the food. Historians still argue, he adds, whether bloodletting was symbolic or essential to Merovingian rites. Personally, I think they were just being honest. You want to look away, but you can't. The blood glows faintly in the bowl. It's not bright red, but a deep old crimson, like it already remembers its ancestors. A servant stirs it with a twig of rosemary, then dips a small cloth into it. He walks the length of the table, stops beside you, and gently brushes your forehead with the cloth. It's warm. It smells like iron, herbs, and something too old to name. The Queen is watching. Everyone receives their anointing. Even the king, eyes still shut, is dabbed just above the brow. The young man in the chair is smiling now. The bowl is full. He stands. The bishop bows to him. The servants disappear with the bowl. Where do they take it, you ask? No one knows, the holy man replies, and those who follow it never return. The young man rejoins the table. His seat is different now, closer to the Queen. His goblet is larger, his plate gilded. The price of elevation, apparently, is a little blood. You look at your own goblet. It's changed too, slightly heavier. You sip. It tastes the same, but it feels different. Like the wine remembers something it shouldn't. The ring on your finger warms again. Not painfully, just persistently. A heartbeat you didn't ask for. You glance toward the entrance. The doors are still closed, still bolted, still watched. A servant collects the scroll from the bishop, hands it to the Queen. She signs it with blood, not hers. The feather is back on your plate, but this time it's white. You try to leave and can't, not out of fear, though that's still curling somewhere low in your spine like smoke. Not even out of confusion, though that's clouding your mind like a wine-slick fog. You try to leave because after everything, the blinking goat eyes, the singing corpse, the ring, the bloodletting, you're full, not of food, of something else. So you place your hands on the arms of your chair and gently, quietly, push yourself to your feet. And that's when it happens. The table responds. Not the people. The table. The cloth beneath your hands pulses. Once. Then again. Then it tightens. Yes, tightens. Around the legs of the chair. Around the corners of your place setting. Around you. You freeze. The ghost is back. Seated across from you. Smiling faintly. Or maybe not smiling at all. It's hard to tell where his mouth ends and the shadows begin. You try to speak. You don't. Because someone else does. From behind. A whisper. Just a breath behind your left ear. It's not over. You turn quickly. No one there. The saints carved in the rafters above have shifted again. Their hands are raised now. Some in blessing, some in warning, some simply open. The Queen stands. She speaks a word. And your chair pulls itself back in. Not violently, just firmly. You're seated again. The ring tightens. The woman beside you takes your hand. Not kindly, not unkindly. Just firmly. You can't leave until it's done. What's it? You ask. She smiles. You'll know. The bishop begins to sing. The first time he's raised his voice all evening. It's low, minor keyed, more moan than melody. The choir joins him. One by one each guest closes their eyes. Even the ghost. Even the Queen. Even the dog. You don't. You can't. Because something is happening. The walls of the hall grow dimmer. Not dark exactly, but less present. The banners ripple without wind. The floor feels warm like soil kissed by sunlight long ago. The candles burn blue, then purple, then white, and then total stillness. You're the only one breathing. You're certain of it. You rise again. This time the table lets you. You walk slowly toward the door, not running, not hiding, just testing. You reach it, and you push. It doesn't move. Of course not. You try again. No latch, no handle, no exit. Then, from behind, the Queen's voice. You're not dismissed. You turn. Everyone is standing now. Everyone is looking at you, and no one blinks. You lower your eyes and sit. Again, your goblet is full. You drink, not because you want to, but because you understand now. This isn't a dinner, it's a loop, a ritual that doesn't end. You're not a guest. You're a vessel, a story to be swallowed and told again, and again, and again. The ghost smiles. The bishop closes the scroll. The Queen lifts her hand. The King finally speaks. Just one word. Begin. And the feast starts over, from the beginning. But now you know the taste of every course, and they all taste like you. And now, as the candles flicker lower and the feast fades from your memory like wine stains on old velvet, you begin to feel the weight lifting, not all at once, but gradually, like stepping out of thick fog into early dawn light. The table grows quiet. The faces around you dissolve into soft shapes, no longer threatening, just echoes. The pulsing cloth beneath your fingertips stills, then cools, until it's nothing more than woven fabric again. Nothing more than linen, not veins, not memory. The singing from the bishop fades into a distant hum. The Queen's voice, once sharp and commanding, is now only a whisper, like wind curling through a keyhole. Even the ghost is gone, or maybe he was never there, and the ring on your finger. Just metal now, warm from your skin, silent. You rise one final time, and this time the doors open. You step through, not into night, but into stillness. No more honeyed wine, no more blinking dishes, no more humming saints. Just the cool hush of a world that was waiting for you to return. Take a breath. Feel your chest rise. Let the air in. Let it all go. The feast is over. You have survived. And now, it's time for rest. Let the flickering candlelight in your mind dim to embers. Let the sound of the table fade behind you, and let yourself slip, gently, quietly, into sleep, 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 into sleep.